What's up, fam? I'm Jazz, and this is Blackxecutive, a networking podcast for Black creative pros by Black creative pros, sharing inspirational stories, actionable advice, and giving away the game to succeed in your business and your career. Join the network where dreamers become doers and the aspiring become inspired. Listen and watch on Blackxecutive.com. Let's get to it. What's up, Blackxecutive fam, and welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of Blackxecutive Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jazz, and today we're talking to Deborah Anderson, also known as BlkWmnAnimator. Deborah is a 3D modeler, teacher, and speaker. She's worked for digital eMation, a premier animation studio in Seoul, South Korea. She's done work for Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, Scooby-Doo, and the LeBrons. And she has a range of teaching experience from training employees in the oil and gas industries to teaching young professionals. And a part of her legacy has been partnering with the New Orleans Recreation Department to host free swim lessons for young professionals. Had to call that out because that's near and dear to my heart. So all that to say that she is literally a 3D superhero. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Dun, 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 dun.
I love it. I love it.
I'm happy to be here.
So I'm glad to have you. Like the swim lessons, I'm gonna come back to it, but I had to call that out because I learned how to swim as an adult like 2 years ago. So
yeah, it was like 3 years ago for me.
yeah, see, that's so important to me because I like, man, and we'll double back to that. But I was like, when I saw that in your bio, I was like, oh my God, that's like that. Talk about legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Like for real. So let's get into it. You're very passionate about what you do as a 3D modeler, and we can see you have your YouTube channel, BlkWmnAnimator. So how did you get started as a 3D modeler?
So all my life I drew and I was good at math. So my journey through like what careers I wanted was very like not animation related, because you know my peers, their journey is, oh, I saw Little Mermaid, Lion King, or some anime, and I wanted to do that, and I just was like surrounded by Disney, but like cool, but I want to do this stuff. And so I went from want to be an architect, and then I found out they didn't draw that much, and then I went through a phase where I drew shoes from the side a lot, and so I found out like industrial engineer, which would have actually been industrial design. And then I landed on wanting to be an electrical engineer because I was really good at math. And in high school, I took the project lead the way classes. So I took like electronics and a couple other classes that were engineering classes. But also my dad is a college professor. And so he got me and my twin brother into dual enrollment. And so I took 7 classes at a community college in Michigan, Schoolcraft College, and the 7th class was 3D animation. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a perfect mesh of my analytical and my creative brain. So let me do this. And so I found that my senior year of high school. And so that's kind of why I started my BlkWmnAnimator platform, because it took me to my senior year. Even being surrounded by Disney and animation and art, I still didn't find it as a career to my senior year of high school.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's still amazing that you even found it as a career in high school. I feel like a lot of us, when we graduated high school, we still didn't know what. We were like, I don't know, maybe go to college, I guess. Like,
right.
You know, that's dope. So you said it's the perfect mesh of your analytical and your creative brain. Can you speak more about that? That kind of speaks to me because I feel very analytical, but I'm very much a creative.
I feel like my analytical mind keeps my creative mind in a prison. You know, typically the creative person is like free and like just discovery, play around in art. And mine is like when I learn, I step by step, and I usually need like a teacher to at least introduce me to it. I'm not really good at self-learning. And so I usually need a teacher to introduce me to it, and then I can kind of go off and learn whatever I want. But I always joke that my personality is, oh, you want me to be free? Can you give me a 52-page PDF on how to do it? And then I can do it. So now that I'm learning digital sculpting in ZBrush, it's difficult for me because it's all about playing around and discovering. And also when you're sculpting, I'm a natural perfectionist. I've been delivered from perfectionism like 80%, but digital sculpting is like, okay, ugly, 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 ugly. And then it starts to look like something. And I feel like as a perfectionist, I need it to look like something at every stage. And
Yeah.
so that's my struggle with like learning digital sculpting and sometimes learning at all.
Yeah, I love how aware you are of your own like strengths and kind of struggles with like your learning styles and your teaching. I feel like that can be very effective. I feel like when people are hyper aware of stuff, you're able to like course correct for those things. And I talk a lot about patterns of error because I'm a writer in the tech space, and so I know I'm really weak with commas. I always sprinkle commas or don't add
Mhm.
commas. So I have to always like check that in my work. So
Yeah.
I think that's really introspective that you're able to have that amount of insight and self-awareness about yourself. That's awesome. And you're
Yeah,
teaching that learning.
I'm trying to kick through the wall like the Kool-Aid man and then like bring the others with me because I really want to discover how to break through this so I can help other people who may be like analytical and creative at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's needed, especially as um, more and more Black creators move into like the tech space and things like
Mhm.
that, and the jobs that are happening and that will be created with the changes that are happening with technology. You know, the work that you're doing, I'm sure, is bringing a lot of awareness to this as a field, especially for us.
Yeah.
So that goes right perfectly into your track record for teaching and training, which is very admirable. So you clearly invest a lot of time bringing your set to those who are aspiring to be 3D artists or just need to like work with you and collab with you. And it seems like you're
Mhm.
educating them also. So how did you get into that teaching and training part, and what fulfillment have you found in it?
I feel like my journey is kind of accidentally following in my father's footsteps because my
Mm,
father, he has a PhD. I ain't getting no PhD, but other stuff like he's been a professor for like 25 years.
mm,
And so, education, I guess my upbringing, particularly when I lived with my father, is education is like a secondary passion of mine. And
mm,
so I started in my effort to get more Black and brown kids and girls into animation. I just started doing workshops and different classes. I taught at Delgado Community College in New Orleans in 2013. It was like a continuing education class, so I had a lot of adults. I did my first like true college course of teaching at Loyola University New Orleans in 2017, and I learned a lot about myself and my like blind spots as a teacher because as an individual, I don't really need praise all that much, um, but I need to do that for some other students.
mm,
So when I was teaching, they were creating awesome work, but they didn't know they were creating awesome work because there's not that like people don't really know about the behind the scenes, the animation, so they don't know when they're doing good work. So you have to tell them.
mm.
And so I definitely needed to work on that more. But what was the second part of the question?
Is how did you find fulfillment in that, or have you found it fulfilling?
Um, Man, like this week, so I did a workshop for the 100 Black Men of New Orleans maybe
Mhm.
4 years ago, or I don't know how long ago that was. But somebody hit me up in my inbox on Instagram this week and was like, "Oh, I was in that class." I thought he was talking about something else, but then I talked to him yesterday and he said that he was in 8th grade when he did that workshop. And I was like, what? And now he's in like graphic design and stuff. He said how much I impacted him. And I was like,
Wow.
whoa. And so I remember, and because I was asking him, was that when I taught the flip books? Because that was another moment where like it started kind of late, so I had to, rush through the presentation part of it, and the adults was asking more questions than the kids, and so
Mhm,
everybody's interested in animation, and then
mhm,
I had like I try to have a thing that they can take away and maybe show their parents, so I taught them flip books like using the yellow note post-it notes, and so
mm,
I had maybe a half hour to do that, and so I taught them like the idea of frames, and they had maybe some McDonald's gift cards or something like that, and so me and another woman went around and judged them. And when I was looking at their flip books, I was like, I taught them that. Like, I only had a half hour. I literally had like maybe 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes for you to actually implement it. And then obviously some of their artistic talent was like innate, but like I remember seeing one young man's flip book, and the timing was just like so awesome. And I'm like,
wow.
well, okay, like I guess partially that was me. And so it's really inspiring. And another time I tutored a kid with Asperger's in 3D, and I tutored him for about a year or so. And to see him, like I taught him Maya, and so to see him where I'm telling him, okay, you have to rotate the camera so that you can see what you're doing, because I don't know, people try to do stuff, and I'm like, just zoom in, like why are you always back here? Like, make it so that you can see what you're doing. And so to go from having to tell him to do things to him, like maybe 6 to 8 months later, where he's just naturally doing it, it's like, oh man, that's cool. And then by the end of it, he went to Academy of Interactive Entertainment in Lafayette, Louisiana, and he was 2 semesters ahead of his peers. So I was like, I be doing stuff.
Wow. Wow. That is, talk about impact. Like, I can't imagine that. I mean, as a teacher, you see, you just keep teaching, and then you don't realize like these people that you taught are growing and learning, and they're becoming an adult. And that's wonderful that you were able to like see that impact, and then put them into like get them interested in this industry that they may not have considered, or this, type of work they may not have even thought about, and like really dive into that passion. That has to be like one of the most heartwarming parts about being an instructor, for sure. I know I did some teaching in my past too, teaching writing, and I had a student. One of my students two of my students have been on this show, because one is at Def Jam now, and another is a writer for Blavity and XO Nicole. And it's like, it's amazing. It's amazing, so I can't even imagine for you teaching students who are entering industries that they may not even have ever considered.
Yeah, I try to take people. I try to take people from zero to hero in the shortest amount of time possible. So even I'm my current position teaching for the Academy of Media Arts in Crenshaw. Like when I saw what they produced in the spring semester with another teacher, I'm like, I blew that out of the water in like week 3. Like we learned a lot of stuff, and then in the last week of school, we had them do a student exhibition. And I had them answer questions about like what they learned and why they chose the class. And I remember one student was like, yeah, last semester we learned like some stuff, but this semester we learned a lot. I was like, yes, thank you. I try.
That's awesome. So have you always okay, so you work with adults and you work with kids. Have you always had a passion for working with kids? Do you find that one group is easier to work with than the other?
Something that I've discovered in adulthood is that adults are just like children. Like, they don't be asking questions like, what? Like, why are you grown and you still acting like you 15 years old and still asking questions? But I feel like maybe, and then I did a workshop for the New Orleans Mini Maker Fair, and there was this like 80-year-old lady in my class, and she was just asking too many questions. I'm like, man, I only have an hour. I ain't got time to teach you all this stuff. I'm just trying to get y'all to make something cool. Like, and so there's that dynamic where I get that people want to know what they're doing, but I ain't got time. I only got time. And so for me, and in that my platform is to kind of like expose kids to the idea of being in animation. And my passion is to increase the diversity in animation. It's not even about just only getting people interested in it as a career, but also as a hobby. So whether I'm trying to conceptually figure out how do I introduce a 5-year-old to animation, or also on the other end, when the senior centers are having their little activities, they be dancing, they do art. How can I create maybe a program and work with maybe a coder to create an interface where one of their activities could be creating animations, and it's not intimidating, this like big 3D program, but there's like this interface that you could put over it where they can just like click different buttons and then do animation for one of their activities at the senior center. So it's like from the rooter to the tutor, like trying to figure out how to expose animation and even help parents like support their children. So in last year, this time, because I went home for Christmas last year, I sat down with my dad about being a supportive parent for an artistic child, because he was like really paramount in my journey. And a lot of parents want to help their children. They just don't know what to do. So
yeah,
I try to help parents as much as possible too.
wow, yeah, I can definitely see that. And that being a field that can be so intimidating, like, 'cause I think it's so cool. That's intimidating for me as an adult. I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to start. I can't draw a stick figure, like.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I don't. So I'm sure that is super intimidating. Like when you work with parents, is all of your work or just like with kids too, is it always hands-on? Like since COVID has happened, have you switched to more of a virtual environment where you're doing one-on-one sessions, like via Zoom or something like that?
Most of the time it's just like them finding me and hit me up through email or through Facebook Messenger, or I'll make a post in a Facebook group and they'll be like, oh, my whoever is interested, and I'll be like, hit me up. I mean, I offer it to all, but people don't always kind of execute and hit me up or something like that. But, I'm always trying to, get people to I'm open to answering any questions, and people don't always take me up on the offer, but the offer's always there. So
Okay, cool. So if someone hits you up, are they able to book like a session with you virtually?
if it comes to that, if they want to do that, usually it's me answering questions in email. Sometimes, like, I had a guy hit me up recently. He wants to do some workshops, and so I did a Zoom, and I'm going to be doing like a little example class for him in a new year. But it depends on what they ask me to do. So usually it's just back and forth through email, or like a guy I know. I know his daughter too. His granddaughter is interested in animation, so I did a phone call with her. But I could tell she is who I used to be in high school, and so I don't think she'll like the phone like that. So I was like, feel free to text me. You don't have to call, because it was a journey, like doing the phone, and even in adulting, I don't really like the phone. I'll have to make a doctor's appointment, like
Yeah.
like okay, I guess I'll do it. But I'm more comfortable talking on the phone now. But I was like, you can text or email. You ain't got to call me, because I feel it.
Yeah. I feel you on that too. I hate if I have to call to do something, it's gonna significantly delay the
Yeah.
time that I get it, because I'm like, oh, I can't do this online.
Right.
I can't, like, like it's just I guess it's just like our generation now. We don't really do
Yeah.
phones, and when somebody calls me without like talking to me and letting me know they're gonna call me, I'm like offended. I'm like, you called me? Did you see if I wanted to
People
talk?
do that on Facebook Messenger. They be sending videos.
Oh,
Like, bro, like we didn't even discuss this. Like,
that's a violation. That's such a violation to me. I'm like, if you don't have my phone number, should not feel emboldened to call me on Facebook Messenger.
yeah, I'll get it.
Okay, so with all that being said, you clearly very passionate, love what you do. What has been the most rewarding part of your career as a 3D modeler, and what has been some of the more challenging parts of it?
So I remember one of the most rewarding parts of my career was, working at Digital eMation in South Korea, and sitting at my desk one day and being like, yes, I did not waste 4 years of college. Because I remember I saw somebody ask a question on their Facebook page, but then I brought the question to my Facebook page, and I was like, if you had to do it over, what major would you choose to major in college? And like 98% of people would choose something different. Like on my page, me and another dude was the only people who would redo and go back for the same degree. So the fact that I was like sitting there being a 3D modeler, I mean, it helped that I was working on famous TV shows, but I mean, I like just being a 3D modeler and realizing like this is my passion. Like I found it. I got a degree in it. I got a job in it. I'm sitting here and I'm not like, I was working 12-hour days, but I'm just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't waste my time. So that was like a huge thing for me. And then like another story from working at Digital eMation was that I remember I had just finished a project and my supervisor, mind you, like none of the people in my in the 3D department spoke fluent English, but we made it work. So my supervisor was giving me my next project, and she was like, "Okay, do you want to do this snake or do you want to do a Batmobile?" And I was just like, "Let me challenge myself, Batmobile." And so that was for an episode of Family Guy, which that clip is actually on YouTube. If you look up Family Guy Lazy Susan, the Batmobile in there, I 3D modeled that. And so I was sitting there and I was like, how am I going to start this? Because a Batmobile is like a very intimidating project. It's like a vehicle. It's very, has a lot of parts. And so I was able to start it. I was able to complete it in maybe 2 weeks. And it was just like a challenge. I decided to challenge myself. So that was like really cool for me. And then after I was done, I had to do the snake anyway, but something, if you go to my like website, BlkWmnAnimator, BlkWmnAnimator.com, you'll see a Batmobile, and that's not the same Batmobile because I still have a hard drive from Korea that I'm going to try to, it's kind of broke right now, but I'm going to try to get somebody, I've been waiting 10 years, like somebody get these files off of here. But I decided to redo the Batmobile, and so that's the second iteration of the Batmobile on my website because it was such a monumental thing in my like life that I wanted to kind of put that moment on the page. So
nice. And we will drop a link to all of that in the show notes and in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. And that segues perfectly into what I was going to ask you. Like, can you talk about your experience working on some of these big name shows? What was that like?
Like I have a whole video about how I got my job in South Korea. It was totally on accident. I didn't do it on purpose. I just like wanted to tour, and then they asked me for a portfolio, and then I created one. But it was like awesome, and I feel like it was freeing for me because a lot of people in the industry are trying for 10 years to get their name in the credits, and like my first job was to get my name. My first job got my name in the credits like a couple times that I saw. And so for the rest of my career, I was able to be like, okay, I can go work for the state of Louisiana in New Orleans and not be chasing this like, oh, I need to get my name in the credits because my first job allowed me to do that. So now I can just get paid. Like, like if y'all pay me the salary, I can do the work. And so I feel like it was awesome, but it was also freeing for the rest of my career where I can like kind of do whatever I want because I'm not chasing that anymore. And then just getting to be like an American and like moving to this foreign country and not trying to be an arrogant American because we have that reputation all over the world.
Yeah.
And like trying to learn a language and trying to learn like their history and their kind of culture. It was like a really great experience. And the only reason I left was because I'm an introvert and I don't like people staring at me like that. And they always stared at me because I had like a bigger afro at the time. And I'm like, yeah, because other people who are maybe extroverts, oh, you got to pretend like you're on the runway, like you're a model. I'm like, but I don't want the attention, so that don't work.
Yeah.
And so I just like, I'm over it. Like y'all just keep staring at me, and I am like, why? Stop. And so, but I liked it. Like it was really cool. The cost of living is really low. It's one of like the cheaper Asian countries to live in. Like I learned how to read. Because like Japanese and Chinese have all those characters, but Korea has an alphabet, and so you just after you learn the alphabet, you can read anything. I can say it. I don't know what it means all the time, but I can read it. And then by the time I left Korea, I would talk to different people, and they would call me Hanguk Saram, which means Korean person. So I'm not fluent in Korean at all, but I could pronounce the heck out of Korean. I can do a little accent. Like at first when I was learning, I felt like I was mocking them because I was trying to get the accent down so much. But I mean, I was trying to sound just like them. And I have like a thing with languages where I'm like really good at accents. Even though I might not know the whole language, but I'm really good at pronouncing stuff. And so it was like a really good experience. And then I do also want to go back to the like last question of like the failures. I didn't answer that, but like, so the failures was the fact that I was not preparing myself properly to get into the industry. So
Mm.
when I graduated from college in 2008, I moved to New Orleans and was like trying to get a job in animation. But, you know, for my specialty, you're supposed to create what's called a demo reel, which is that like maybe 1 minute video where you're kind of showing your 3D models off. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna just put some pictures on the website and try to get a job. And then that didn't work. And so me going to Korea was like, okay, if I don't get a job by this time, then the only thing that's comparable is living in a foreign country. So that's kind of how I ended up in South Korea. Plus, I had to pay my bills,
Right.
and they was hiring teachers. Like you just had to have a degree in anything and be from like the U.S., Canada, England, Australia, New Zealand, and maybe Ireland. And so I was like, well, that's easy. It's much harder now. And so when I was about to actually taught English the first year, and then I was going to re-up on the second year, and my friend Derek was like, don't you have a degree in animation? I'm like, oh yeah. And you know, the further you're like away from trying to get in the industry, the harder it is. So I thought, okay,
Mhm.
I'll do that. And so all I asked for was like I emailed a bunch of animation companies and like asked for a tour. And you know, I had one at an incubator in Gwangju where I was teaching, and then in Seoul at Digital eMation. And then like at the end of the tour, they just asked me if I had a demo reel, and I still didn't have a demo reel, but I was like, I can't.
Mhm.
And so for the next 4 months, I worked on a demo reel, and then I sent it to them, and then they offered me a job. So the,
Nice.
the biggest, like trying to now I have that frame of mind where if I'm not trying to properly prepare myself for the for the whatever my goal is, then it can happen, but it's probably I can't get mad that it's not happening if I
Yeah.
do all the bullet points, at least the minimum bullet points to do this. So
Mhm.
that also kind of frees my mind of okay, um, I didn't do everything. I haven't exhausted all of my like possibilities, so I
Mhm.
can't be too mad, or I could just be mad at myself. So
Mm. That's real though. Yeah. You have to prepare yourself and be ready. You touched on a lot of interesting points. One thing I know about like the teaching in Korea.
Mhm,
So, as I said earlier, I'm a writer. So in my program, a lot of writers do that too. They go
mhm,
over there because we teach. A lot of us teach to get I have my master's degree, and I taught to get my master's degree.
mhm.
College
Then you
student.
get paid more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so a lot of them will go do it overseas
Yeah.
because they'll pay you. They use it to pay off any student loans,
Mhm,
stack up their bread, come back, buy a house, get a comfortable job, you know. And so I have a former classmate who like went, I think she went to Japan, to China. I don't
mhm.
remember where she went, but
Yeah,
she had the same experience. She's tall, black
yeah,
woman, and she was like, it's exhausting. It's
yeah.
exhausting. Want to take pictures
You
with
can't hide.
of you. Yeah, and she's like, it's a different type of she was like, it's a different type of racism. It's like an innocence. Like they're just
Yeah,
this
it's like a warm
curiosity.
blood. Like they're more all about their people more than against your people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And she talked a lot about that in some of our past conversations. So yeah, I feel what you're saying on that. Another point that I wanted to kind of double back to, you mentioned the importance of having your name in the credits. So another guest we had on the show is, AJ Moore. He
Mhm.
mentioned um
That's my mentor.
yes,
My
yes.
first mentor ever.
He is so awesome. So I don't know what order y'all episodes are going to be in,
Mhm,
but make sure you go back and watch AJ's episode too, so you can see how this all connects. So we're building a Black executive universe here. Um, but I know he talked about like the importance of like having credit and stuff, being an animator in the field, and a lot of times you put in all of this work, and
mhm,
then it's the company, it's like Pixar or
mhm,
it's the Cleveland show that gets all the credit, and you're just like, and you're like, I put so much into this.
mhm.
So can you talk about like the importance of like that significance of having your name in the credits?
Yeah, for me, it's like so for my journey, it's like, okay, I have this YouTube channel, right? And I produce all this content, and I fully believe if I was like, I could be Disney 3D modeler or Pixar 3D modeler, then my channel would be much bigger because it was like if I ever land a position at one of these studios, I feel like I go go gangbusters. And it's like, I always knew what I was talking about, but now that I have this name behind it, now y'all think I know what I'm talking about now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so additionally, I remember being in college where I never wanted, like, I live in Los Angeles now, but I never wanted to live here because I was like, it's expensive. And then when I was deciding to leave New Orleans and trying to decide where to go, I was like, California was not on my list at first. I was like, I'm too old to be poor. And so somebody actually in the Urban League movement who was a president in the Bay Area, I think she convinced me to put California on my list at all, because it wasn't even like I took it off my list. It was just not on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this idea of, getting these credits, like, because I had that experience with my first studio, I was free from the idea that I had to get those credits or that it meant that I was good. Like, I can work for the state of Louisiana, and people always be like, every time I told the people I was an animation specialist for Louisiana economic development, they'd be like, there was only like one person who didn't make that face or like wasn't like, what? Because we were actually the first state department to have like animation. And so that's not something that you hear working in government. And so I think, for the layman, and even me going by BlkWmnAnimator, like, people don't know what a 3D modeler is. So if I went by BlkWmnModeler, I would have to deal with like, oh, you're a runway model? Like, no.
Yeah.
Or what is, like, so I call myself BlkWmnAnimator, even though I'm not an animator, just because I just need you to see my name, get excited, and either your child wants to do this or you want to do this and you want to reach out to me. That's why I go by BlkWmnAnimator, because it's just the easiest thing to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm deciding to rebrand in the past 2 weeks, and like, not rebrand, but like my personal work. So I'm still gonna go by BlkWmnAnimator, but I'm creating like a Deb the 3D modeler, like, social media stuff, so that I can kind of separate it.
Yeah, I feel that. I have a trillion aliases. I do so many things. I got like fitness stuff. I got writing stuff. I got podcasts. Like, so yeah.
I got like 5 Instagram accounts on my
phone, me too.
And that's not even all the Instagram accounts I got. So
me too. I have so many different identities for stuff. I'm like, I need to get this all under one LLC and just do DBAs. Like, I need to get yeah. So okay, so just to quick touch point on that. So you said that when you tell people that you do 3D modeling for like the Louisiana Economic Development Department, what is that? What does that look like? I'm sure people probably make that face because they're like, what does you think animation and you think like fun, cute characters.
Yeah.
And then you hear like economic development, and you're like, are you doing buildings? Like, are you like
So basically I worked for the Fast Start program, and that's an incentive program. So a big thing across the country for like the film industry is to get those like tax credits. And that's why New Orleans at some point was going to be the Hollywood of the South until Bobby Jindal ruined that. And then Atlanta has their thing, so there's these tax incentives. So for other industries, there's this idea, okay, if you were like, Louisiana Economic Development is always either working on someone starting a company in Louisiana or making their like second or third or whatever part of the company in Louisiana, so that we can get more jobs and stuff like that. So they're always working for that. And if you work through Louisiana Economic Development and bring your company to Louisiana, they'll give you these tax incentives. And so my program, the Fast Start program, was free for them. So they provided job fairs, training materials, and all this stuff because they brought their company to Louisiana. So I was kind of like a cog in a wheel where some of my coworkers were like teaching in the Louisiana college system. So they would be teaching like C4M, something for manufacturing. It was like teaching, in the oil and gas and stuff like that, like industrial manufacturing stuff. Or they would be working with a company to create their pre-hire stuff or post-hire like curriculum. And so I would either create like an image for a PowerPoint or something, or a video for a training video, or even a video for a PowerPoint, whether it's for the college community college system or for a company. And so I did a lot of industrial manufacturing stuff. boring stuff, stuff that when I moved to Los Angeles, I could not use it for my demo reel. So that's why I like working on creating a new demo reel, because I can't like show all this like pipes and boring stuff. I have to be like, okay, that's not what will be created in a film or something. So I have to like start over. So yeah, that's essentially what happened. And I think after we did it, so in the, is it the Business Insider, for the 11 straight years, we got the best economic development department in the country.
Wow.
So, but I think the people we compete against, or they compete against, is like North Carolina, maybe Georgia. Yeah, Georgia, because like we're called Fast Start, and in Georgia, a lot of people who worked for Fast Start came from Georgia, which was Quick Start. So they poached a lot of the people.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Okay, I'm glad that makes sense though. Like now that you tied it all together, because you know, at first I was gonna make the face, but I was like, what does that mean?
Right.
So that kind of segues into, you know, the last few parts as we get ready to wrap up. So can you talk a little bit about like your daily workflow, like when you're just working through things, even not necessarily talking about like the economic department, but just like your process as a 3D modeler, the tools that you use and whatnot?
Yeah, so typically for me, reference is everything. So whether I was working for digital eMation or working for LED, or even in my personal projects, I try to look as much reference as possible. So for example, when I did the Batmobile for digital eMation, they gave me maybe a 3/4 view. I think they only gave me a 3/4 view of the Batmobile. So then I had to go look up on Google, like, okay, what does this thing look like from the front, side, top, bottom, back, and all this stuff. So for any artist, like, so for some reason we get to this point like where we think, oh, if we use reference images, or if we look at something, that means it's not art. Like even the old OG artists like Michelangelo, all them, they use reference. So I don't know how we got to this point where we think that everything has to come from our head, but it doesn't. So, and so that's a huge part of being a 3D modeler, is using as much reference as possible and even if you're creating more cartoony stuff, you still need reference, whether it's using the real stuff and like making it more stylized, or finding like stuff out on ArtStation or Behance or Instagram, where concept artists have created already stylized things, and you can kind of create a demo reel from that, or you can just use that for reference in whatever project you're doing. So that's the process. And then the programs I use are mostly Maya. When I worked for the state, I would use Cinema 4D because it was just easier to do some animation stuff in Cinema 4D because of the MoGraph tools. And then for my personal projects, if I use Maya to model, I'll use Cinema 4D to render, because in Cinema 4D, you could just add the material. They got a little pre-made materials. I'll add the pre-made materials. They got like the physical sky rendering, like the lighting. I could just put that on there and then render, and I'm done. Because Maya, you just gotta, like, you can do that in Maya, but it's just like so much easier in Cinema 4D. And then when I'm teaching now at the Academy of Media Arts is Blender. And so I got a job teaching Blender, but I ain't really know Blender like that before. So I'd be like, the week before or the week of, I'd just be like, okay, what am I teaching this week? Let me look at some YouTube videos. Okay. Because, you know, I try to teach people whatever, if you are interested in 3D, whether it's modeling, animation, texturing, or whatever, pick the 3D program you feel most comfortable with, and then get in your mind that you're learning the skill set. You're not learning the program.
Yeah.
Because people get kind of stuck in their head like, oh, I only know 3ds Max, or no, you know 3D. If you go to another program, you just need to learn the program, like the navigational tools and the tools you use to be successful. So if you use extrude over here, how do you extrude in this program? So I just want people to know that, like, if you, whatever 3D program, even if it's SketchUp or some arbitrary iPad thing, you just get in your mind that you're learning the skill set and it's transferable to any program out there. Now ZBrush, that I've been struggling with that for like 7 years. So it's not always work, but push through anyway.
Yeah, I feel that you gotta learn the skill set. You're not necessarily learning the software. So you touched on a lot of points. Another episode, season 1, Tay Ebbison, he's a designer, product designer for the web, and he talked about that whole thing of like nothing is created new. You can It's okay to seek inspiration. Just know how to not copy directly what someone
Yeah.
is doing.
You just put 5 things together and then it's original.
Yes, that was original. Yeah, it's your work. It has your creative interpretation. Okay, so you already gave a lot of good advice. Do you have any final advice that you would recommend for your creatives who are looking to get into 3D modeling?
So, obviously there's like things like Pluralsight out there, which used to be called Digital Tutors, where you can learn stuff. There's YouTube. If you need any type of like guidance, because a lot, YouTube, like older generations say that, oh, we have access to all this information, but it's all over the place. I remember when I was learning, I had to learn Cinema 4D for when I started working at LED, and I had to purchase digital tutors because I was trying to learn on YouTube, but it's all segmented, and I'm like, how do I just go step by step? So if you need any guidance, feel free to reach out to me. But the most important, like, get your soft skills together, learn how to communicate with people. Like, the hard skills are important, but you need to get your soft skills together. And a tidbit about networking: I think a lot of people in every industry kind of don't know how to network. So when you network with people, connect with them as a human being. Like, don't try to get something from them.
Yes.
Even if you're like if you're not natural at it, if you need to be analytical about it, just think about, okay, you want to constantly stay in contact with this person and not ask them for anything, so that when you ask them for something, it won't seem suspicious. So like, there's a lot of people just immediately, oh, do you need a writer for this? Or do you need this, like a concept artist for this? Do you need, or like, I went to a gaming, when I first moved to Los Angeles before pandemic, I went to like this gaming networking event, and they're like, oh, here's my card if you ever need this, if you ever need this. But it's like, become friends, or at least, at very least, associates that talk.
Yes.
And because a big thing was, like, I connected with a guy when I was at Digital eMation 10 years ago. And I just, like, every 6 months, every year, would like hit him up on LinkedIn or through email and ask him about himself. And he asked me, or I'll offer, like, okay, this is where I'm at in life right now. And then last year sometime, he had like gotten sick, and he just like hit me up on LinkedIn and told me about it. And he was like, I'm like contacting all the like important people. And I'm like, I'm important. I just like email you like once every year. And so that's like important to people, to connect on a human level and not like try to just get something from them. Like, you're building relationships, and then you're cashing in on it eventually. So
yeah, that's so true, that you have to have authentic networking for real. And hear people, when they talk to you, actually listen to what they're saying and soak that in, and not listening for your place to interject and ask for something. So yeah, I totally feel it. That's excellent advice. I think we've had a lot of people drop gems about network, but that one was really unique, that you like, even over time, over a year, if it's once a year, I'm hitting you up, like, that's still something, like, have that point of contact.
Yeah, because when I interviewed Dan Haskett on my YouTube channel. He's like animation legend. Like, a lot of, like, Glenn King gets a lot of publicity for like animating Ariel from Little Mermaid, but Dan Haskett actually designed Ariel, and he's a black man.
Cool.
And so Dan Haskett was my Facebook friend for like 3 years, and I never talked to him. And then I wanted him to be on my channel. I was like, I can't just ask him. I thought he would do it, but I was like, so for like 3 weeks, I was like, hey, Dan, I don't want anything. How are you doing? And then like the other time, like, and I hope you're good. And then I was like, the third time, like, can you be on my YouTube channel? So I was like, I tried to fast track it, but I was just like, let me not ask for something. I don't know if he noticed, but now he's my best friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm in the process of doing that too. I don't know how up you are on Clubhouse, but it's awesome. And I've had the privilege of being in a room with one of my favorite authors as a teen, Zane.
Oh, I saw
And
that room.
yeah, I've been in a few of her rooms, and I've been able to ask her a few questions, and I'm like working my way up, start commenting on her IG. I'm working my way up, so I can try to get her on the show.
Clubhouse is so interesting. It's like it's such a so interesting a dynamic of how you can like the people who are like famous or prominent in our industries, they're more apt to like connect with you through Clubhouse.
Mhm.
It's like such an interesting dynamic where it's
Yes.
like more familiar.
Yes.
Add something to the networking piece with that is that something I've learned is that you know the idea, if some people know the idea, if you look into, if you get like interview tips, they'll tell you treat everybody with respect. So sometimes
Mhm.
when you go into interview, the boss will ask the secretary like, how did they treat you? Because that's
Mhm.
important. Like if you walk into an interview and you treated the secretary like they were nothing, but like sometimes the secretary is the most powerful, like the second most powerful person in the
Real
office.
talk, real talk.
So it's like treat everybody with respect. So then if you take that to networking, network a lot with your peers and the people below you, because you never know what people be in 5 years, and
Facts.
they'll remember how you treated them. And
Facts.
so if you're trying to get to Issa Rae, respect her assistant or respect the
Mhm.
person who works for her, and then they might connect you with her. And
Mhm.
so it's very important to like the people who are connected to these famous people, or even whether they're connected to famous people or not, like treat them with the utmost respect, try to get to know them, because they'll remember that. And
Mhm.
when they think of somebody like, oh, Issa Rae needs a writer for this, they'll be like, oh, I know
Mhm.
this person who treated me with respect and didn't treat me
Mhm.
like trash trying to get the Issa Rae, so I'll
Mhm.
connect them. Or when they become somebody, they'll remember you.
Facts. Oh yeah, I totally with that. Like you never know where people are gonna go. Like I said earlier, I never knew I would have a student who like goes to the Grammys, or and he like knows my favorite rappers. Like you never know what journey people are gonna go on, and you
Mhm.
need to treat everybody with respect for real. Like totally feel that. Um, Last question. Well, two-part question.
Mhm.
You already kind of touched on how your work impacts the Black community. So
Mhm.
I'll definitely leave the floor open for you to comment on that if you have anything else you want to wrap up. But I also wanted to ask if you have any book recommendations. So that two-part.
So I remember you talking about how AJ said that animators don't usually get the shine, and I did want to mention that that's what the purpose of my platform, like my YouTube channel, is that
Mhm.
there are few Black people in the animation industry, but there are more than we realize. And
Mhm.
so I interview Black animation professionals on my YouTube channel. It's not always the people who work for Disney or Pixar. I remember I interviewed Ebonics. She does like black hair for the Sims game, and so
Oh.
it's like all different type of people. But I got to interview Ron Husband, who was the first Black animator to work for Disney. And the big thing that I'm trying to do is not only like introduce you to these people, but like highlight their humanity. And like for
Mhm.
them, I want to like show that I'm actually interested in them as a person, and not just like gleaning information for personal gain, for
Yeah.
whether it's for me or for other people. And
Mhm.
so that's like a huge thing, because I remember I hit up one person and they were like, I'm not in the animation industry anymore. I was like, yep. They're like, I'm not an animator. I'm like, yep, but you're Black and you were in the animation industry and you work for Disney. Like, and
Mhm.
so even like the people outside of animators are not used to getting like recognition. So that's important too.
Mhm.
Like, if you are this obscure person who is not an animator, and because people concentrate on animators, I want to highlight you too.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then as far as books, a book that I just got is
Ooh.
Anatomy for 3D Artists, because I'm trying to learn how to digitally sculpt. So an important thing is form and like the foundational pieces. So that goes into, like when you talk about using reference or getting stuff out of your head. I've
Mhm.
never been like, even when I drew a lot, I'm always a person to like copy what I see, whether it was like copying from my Disney books or my VHS tapes, or like doing like real life drawing. But I never was able to get it out of my head. But I realized on like 20 years later that's why they tell you the foundation of like learning form and
Mm-hmm.
The introductory drawing or whatever stuff is important, because if you constantly drawing and practicing those things, then you can put the stuff in your head onto the page more easily. So they tell you that they don't be giving you the context when they tell you to learn foundations, but that's why it's important, because I still draw from my head, but I'm gonna start learning the more foundational parts. And then like for the sculpting, it's gonna be important for me to learn like the muscle structure and stuff like that, so I can do characters. Because our eye, even the regular person, if you look at something, you can tell it's off, even if you can't, because we look at humans all day.
Yeah.
That's why it's important for like 3D artists to know like anatomy, or if you don't know the names of the things, you know how they look, so that you can create it more realistic. And even for like more stylized cartoony characters, you still need to know some type of anatomy, because it's still important under the structure of the like stylized or cartoony character.
Wow, that's so interesting. Like it makes perfect sense that you're saying that, but I just didn't think about it. Like, of course you would need to study anatomy. You're drawing people. That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah. I hope somebody, if you're looking into like 3D modeling and animation, hope you got that tip, because that is super valuable.
Yeah.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to keep up with your creative journey?
So for my BlkWmnAnimator platform, I'm BlkWmnAnimator everywhere. BlkWmnAnimator, all one word. Stop splitting it up, please. Don't put no periods, no hyphens. Like, it's all one word, and it's trademarked. Like, so it's BlkWmnAnimator. If you don't capitalize the B, W, or A, that's fine, but it's still all one word. And stop putting like black, the word black, word woman, word, like, no, I have this everywhere. It's BlkWmnAnimator, one word, and then it's missing a couple letters. And then if you want to see my personal work, I'm rebranding that as Deb the 3D modeler. So I'm on Instagram right now. I immediately got suspended from Twitter. Don't know what that was about. Like, I was like, I just created this account and I ain't do nothing yet. Why y'all suspend me? So I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, Deb 3D modeler for my personal work, and I'm working on a website for that. So that's where you can find me. And subscribe to my YouTube and share it with people.
Yes, subscribe. If you made it through this whole interview, then you definitely want more Deb. So go over to BlkWmnAnimator right now and start streaming some of her content. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Like, I know we like talked on so many things, because you're doing so many things, and it's like, I just want to capture all of this because it's so interesting.
Yeah, I'm multifaceted.
That's awesome. Thanks for watching Blackxecutive. Join the conversation in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe. You can find a full list of all available podcast episodes on BlkXecutive.com or wherever you stream. Until next time, keep aspiring to inspire.